Hey, Dallas, how are you today? How many of you are missing sports? How many of you are feeling lost without it? We wanted to bring on Jared Sandler, who is a broadcaster. We'll let him tell you all about himself, but certainly affected by our current conditions, the COVID-19 pandemic that we are all experiencing. So we wanted to bring you on, Jared. I think sports means a lot to a lot of people, and I know for you, it's the basis of who you are. And this has got to be affecting sports fanatics differently even than others. You guys were the first ones to shut down and in the industry. Can you tell everybody how that process looked and what it's been like, and maybe give them a little glimpse about where they can find you broadcasting first as well?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me, Carrie. Broadcaster is probably the best way to put it. I'm fortunate to do some stuff with the Rangers, 105.3 The Fan, which is the flagship station of the Rangers. And then on the TV side, on Fox Sports Southwest, and then a little bit of college basketball stuff for ESPN. So it's a lot of fun. I'm usually 12 months out of the year pretty busy with sports. Obviously, that's not really the case in the same way right now. I'm still staying busy doing sports things, but I'd normally be getting ready for a baseball game probably tonight and every single night for the next several months, and that's just not the case, unfortunately. But it was kind of chaotic how it all unfolded when we first learned that sports weren't going to continue as normal. I was in Arizona for spring training, actually watching the Mavericks game on ESPN, and it was during that game in which ESPN came in and said that the NBA season was going to be suspended, and that was sort of the first domino to fall among the big professional sports leagues here. Some college conferences, maybe specific universities, had already made some alterations to what was normal for them, and that was kind of the first sign that, all right, this really is going to impact the sports world, because a lot of times the sports world seems like Teflon and no one really knows. We're all trying to, as a society, do our part to flatten the curve and push past this rough period of time as quickly and as practically as possible. But I don't know, and no one really knows when sports will return. One thing I do know, just based on precedent that's been set not only in this country but around the world, that when sports does return, it will play an incredibly huge role in helping to return a sense of normalcy to this country. Sports has played a big role in the response to devastations that this country has felt, in the past, certainly in my lifetime. And I imagine that sports for different people, but I think sports will certainly play a big role in that when we get to that point.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. It absolutely will. It's a unifying factor for a lot of people. This has got to be, strange. I don't want to say hard, because maybe it's not. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's got to be unusual for you personally. You have a life that you've worked very, very hard to achieve in the sports world. How are you feeling, and how's the impact been for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because, whether it's, in our family, outside of the family, just people we know, people we don't know, society as a whole, I know that this is having such a tremendously negative impact. And so it's, to be honest with you, Carrie, we were talking before we started, I'm getting to spend time with my wife that I never really get to spend during this time of year. So there are silver linings, but, at the end of the day, I think both my wife and I would trade in this time we're getting to spend with one another for, again, a return to normalcy, or to just erase this chapter in our lives. And, thankfully, and knock on wood, it hasn't, COVID has not directly impacted anyone in our families. But, the reality is, chances are at some point we will know someone directly who is going to have to overcome this. But we know several people whose lives have been turned upside down by this. And, I've had some changes to, what I'm used to, on the professional side. And, certainly the way we're living our lives right now is much different than previously. But yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I think I can get by the fact that, I'm not getting to watch baseball or live sports, just because in the big picture, as much as I think sports will play a role in our recovery, right now, the absence of sports is trivial when you consider the other elements of adversity that, we're facing. And so I don't, I as much as I'd love to be there, I'd love to, help bring in Globe Life Field in its first year and just get to do my job and do what I love to do. I am enjoying as much as I can time with my wife. But I haven't really had a moment where I've thought, man, I am really struggling because there's no baseball. It's more just an amazement as to what's going on, and still in some ways a disbelief that this movie-like pandemic is actually a reality. And so I'm excited for sports, whenever their return will come, and I'm very privileged that in some way I might be able to be a part of that and maybe be able to help provide some entertainment. I'll tell you, Carrie, I know for me specifically, my wife and I dealt with something really tough almost a year ago when our house flooded, and about 3 weeks into living in this house, our first house, not only together but just in general, we were, our world turned upside down. We lost our house and knew financially we were going to have some challenges. And for me, being able to go to a baseball game every night was a tremendous escape. And I know that sports can provide that same escape for others as well.
Yeah. Wow. You've had a lot going on in your life in the last little while, haven't you?
I think we all have, and
it's
help provide some tremendous perspective again as to what's really important, and that's I think what's tough is that what people are losing right now aren't just material things that they can't recover. And it's easy to say, well, you can always make more money, but the reality is losing money that hurts, and I certainly would never try and diminish that. But there are also people who are losing lives, whether it's a family member or friend, and that stuff is incredibly tough to deal with. But I think any level of adversity that anyone has been able to persevere through certainly provides some perspective in this crazy time.
Yeah, for sure. I know that you aren't a fortune teller, but I'd like to hear your perspective, or maybe you are. I'd like to hear your perspective on what you think or how you think sports may change, or if you think it's going to change. And if so, how do you see it being different when we're back to normal again?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can answer that on a few levels. And first of all, like you said, I don't know anything for sure. I'm not even speaking with any level of insight that someone else might not have who's not connected to sports. Because, like I said at the beginning, I mean, there are just so many answers we need that we don't have in order to kind of frame this. But my guess, Carrie, is that sports will return without fans, and I think a part of that is financially. TV contracts, the sooner that they can honor as much of those commitments as possible, that helps the bottom line, that helps these leagues and teams, and ultimately the domino effect to individual people making the money that they expect to make, and to allow them to try and either recover or grow. And I think not that sports will be rushed for this reason, but based on what we talked about, I think the various commissioners of these leagues have all come out and acknowledged publicly their awareness of the role that sports could have in bringing a return to normalcy. But, the other part of this is when they do say, all right, it's safe to go to a sporting event again, I don't know if people are going to be rushing to cram into an arena or a stadium and sit right next to strangers and be packed together, amongst 40, 60, 80,000 other folks. People are talking about college football and whether that season will take place. But, I think of some of these venues like Michigan Stadium, also known as the Big House, 100,000 folks all together in one area. I mean, are people going to want to go to games right away? I don't know. I've heard some people say that they're not going to go to a mass gathering until a vaccine is made available. And who knows when that will be. So my guess is the consumption of sports will change. And perhaps we might be playing in totally empty venues, or certainly not as full as what we're used to. And then, I will say, and I know this isn't necessarily the direction you were looking, but one area of excitement I have, and I am, I use that word only within the framework of this discussion and not excitement because of why this is the case. But sports leagues and teams are forced to get out of their comfort zone right now. Adjustments are going to be made. And I think because of everything going on, there's going to be lots more cooperation than what these leagues and teams are used to whenever a change gets presented. And I'm excited to see what comes of this and what changes are made. It's at minimum going to give us a little bit of a different look into the sports world, one that we might never get again, because hopefully this does get back to normal as soon as possible. But perhaps some of these changes are made permanent, whether it's, a restructuring of this league or that, or, more playoff teams here, change in roster sizes and stuff. So I am curious to see what is a result of all this. And I think that sports will in some way change long-term because of maybe some short-term changes that are necessary right now that are received so well and end up, being a permanent fixture in whatever sport or in whatever way it is. But as far as the return of sports, my guess is that it's going to be consumed way more in a living room or in an entertainment center, or, somewhere in your home, as opposed to in person, at least for the start.
So interesting, right? Like it's so interesting to actually hear that, because I think there's this part of us that hasn't quite acknowledged that this is a little bit here to stay for a while. There's still that moment of going, wait, oh yeah, we are in a pandemic, and there's this new normal that sets in, but then you do start to think about what will actually happen afterwards. And you're right, it's not like it's going to automatically go back to normal. Everything's going to shift and change a little bit, at least for a while.
Yeah, no doubt.
I know you've been staying incredibly active. I know that there are lots of ways that people can connect with you. Can you tell us everything you've got going on right now and how we can find you?
Yeah. So Twitter at Jared Sandler. And, I've been busy. This has allowed me, I guess, some time to do some things to stay active and to contribute from a professional standpoint. I've been able to do something that I've long wanted to do, and that's sit down with sports figures and have long form conversations with them to figure out who they are and how they became who they are. And for some of them really dive into specific moments of their life. And I've been able to do some of those. I'm releasing 2 a week, and I've been able to talk with people like Jason Terry, and I think this week we're releasing Al Whitley, who is one of Mark Cuban's most trusted voices with the Mavericks. Ken Rosenthal is one of the foremost baseball reporters out there. Derek Holland, and hoping to get the big German at some point, Dirk Nowitzki, and get some of the big athletes in DFW. But that's been a lot of fun. And, just from a charity standpoint, I'm fortunate to, have some amazing people around me who a few years ago helped me start a charity that supports people, kids specifically with physical and mental or intellectual disabilities. But right now our focus is just supporting the world, the community around us. And so North Texas Giving Day is having a pop-up version that starts tomorrow. And so people can donate. I'll be posting on Twitter and on Facebook ways to donate. And the money that we raise is going to go towards helping those in need because of the pandemic. And so we're still looking in. It's a fluid situation, looking into ways we can help and maybe trying to find something within our typical window of those with disabilities, because everyone's been impacted and undoubtedly their impacts being felt in that community. But that's one thing that we're doing. And then also in the month of May, going to probably have a pop-up auction, and proceeds from that will again go towards supporting those who have been impacted by COVID and this wacky pandemic.
I'm always so impressed with you, your heart and everything that you put out into this world. I told you that the first time I met you, and it still stands clear. Thank you for everything that you contribute to Dallas. Thank you for putting it all out there all the time. You are one of a kind, Jared Sandler. Thank you very much for joining.
That's very kind of you. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'll see you soon. Dallas, we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us.